Spent $97,000 on a getaway for a conference to get inspiration on the homelessness crisis. And of course, the crisis that's caused by this Liberal government. Were you aware of this crisis? Or were you aware of this $97,000 being spent on this conference? I attended the conference, spoke at the conference, and met with a number of Government of Canada staff who were at the conference, which is the most significant homelessness conferences. Get the $97,000. I'm going to read the purpose of it. According to the documents we have, the purpose of this conference is to arm policymakers, funders, researchers, advocates, community leaders, and frontline workers with inspiration, end quote. Do you think that's a good use of money? Through the chair, I think it's the most important homelessness conference in the country, and that's consistent with the funding that's been allocated in previous years to make sure that the Government of Canada is present and represented, and the programs that we provide can be communicated. Do you feel inspired? And the purpose was to get inspiration. So do you feel inspired? I think the purpose was for education. It was also for the number of our programs to be able to meet with all of the local proponents, all the organizations that work on homelessness were able to connect to our homeless shelter in Ottawa, or maybe back home in Vancouver. We know homelessness was up 38% while you were Vancouver's mayor. Maybe it would have been better just to visit a homeless shelter. It would have been better use of money or use of time. Excuse me, we do have...
Today we're going to be talking about the one thing that I think the left truly ignores about the federal government, and that is that they are very unwilling to listen to frontline workers. Welcome back to the Freedom Pines podcast. I'm your host, Jamie A.B. This is where we debrief and discuss pop culture and politics from an independent perspective. And if that interests you, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this with your friends because it's hard to get my name out in Commie Canada. Let's get into it. So this is a huge problem, right? As we watched in that clip, this Liberal is telling us and justifying why he spent $97,000 to go to a conference to learn how to help the homeless. Well, I'm just wondering if you guys are looking around wondering, did he help any homeless people with $97,000? That is an insane thing for... Can you just imagine if PierrePoilievre spends $97,000 to go to a conference to learn about homelessness instead of talking to people right on the front lines on how to fix it? And by the way, my guess is on how we help alleviate the homelessness crisis is, I don't know, stop having so many people come into the country when we are already under a homelessness crisis. Number two, I don't know, look around to municipalities and ask them why they're putting up so much red tape to ensure that people cannot put up social housing. There was a guy in Toronto who had a bunch of small, tiny homes that he put up in the city for people who were homeless, and they were immediately taken down because the government doesn't want us to get ahead. This harm reduction sort of situation, you know, I'm sure there are so many people who work at these places that tell themselves that what they're doing is for the best. But I can assure you, as somebody who has quite literally given somebody methadone, okay, the whole point of it during Harper was the fact that it was going to stay out of the hands of kids because they were going to get a substance that didn't make them, that they couldn't take. This woman had to lift up her tongue, show me all around her cheeks. I had to make sure that she took that before she left, and we both had to sign off on it. Now there's vending machines of way more potent things. The whole point of harm reduction, by the way, was so that people didn't have to resort to these sorts of things, and they had a safe place to go if they did get their hands on something like that, and that it would stay out of kids' hands. Okay, and what about education? Mr. Doug Ford over here sinks $500 million into DEI programs in Canada across the school boards. Why is nobody listening to frontline workers? Because frontline workers can tell you that the fact that the kids all of a sudden don't have consequences to their behaviors is exactly why the schools are falling apart. And it's because of DEI initiatives. Okay? Special education kids need and deserve their own space to learn and thrive. It doesn't mean we can't integrate them into the classroom in other ways, like during art or gym class. It doesn't mean we never see the kids with special needs. It means that they come into the classroom where they thrive. So if it's art, gym class, math, French, whatever it is, bring them to the class during that class so they have a safer home base. We need to desperately make suspensions great again, make jail great again. If we don't give consequences to behavior, not even just suspensions, but I've seen behavior that absolutely warrants a suspension and it has not been taken out whatsoever. Okay, there is a rumor in the schools, because God forbid the publicly funded schools provide any, outline of how they spend their money whatsoever. But there is a rumor that the less amount of suspensions that you did as your time as principal, the more likely it is that you're going to be promoted to the school board or superintendent or something like that. And that doesn't surprise me whatsoever, honestly, with the whole DEI situation. But that is alleged. That was a huge rumor, though, as EAs, as the ones who were literally being spit on, choked, hit, slapped, abused, okay? Nobody spoke to us. We would basically have these new meetings where the principal would get some sort of, new behavior modification, implementation nonsense. And they'd basically be like, well, we're not going to give consequences to students' behaviors anymore because we find that these people are all coming from a really crappy home and that's why they're doing that. Some kids are not coming from a crappy home. Some kids just have crappy behavior, and the more that you allow them to get away with said crappy behavior, the more they're going to do it. That's literal science, okay? You don't have to harm children in the slightest to give consequences to their behaviors. Okay, they are devastated if they're sent home. They are devastated if they have a suspension. It's all rooted in not giving any shame. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. They sunk $500 million of DEI, of taxpayers' money, into the schools, which is the exact problem that's creating all of these low test scores. We're basically raising a bunch of letting the schools do social justice warrior things instead of actually teaching math. Like, maybe Doug Ford should look at the SOGI curriculum where it says that they're implementing all of these different things in different, like, literacy and art and math. Yeah, what does the LGBT community have to do with math? Good question. And I know you guys are sitting there like, wait a minute, these places are unionized. Are the unions not listening to frontline workers? Bingo! They're captured by an ideology, okay? And I want to remind everybody that race theory and queer theory are theories that our government is implementing in all of our social programs as fact. When actually the fact is that if we stuck to our ethical standard of practice instead of switching over to DEI, Canada would be running a lot more smoothly. I said to my husband the other day, when I heard that these nurses were having to pick and choose who lives and who passes during their shift, and it's up to like, they're seeing 4 to 7 people be unalive during their shifts. And I said, how did the union even get past 1? If our healthcare system is failing so much that 1 person or 2 people or whatever the abnormal number is of humans that are passing while nurses are working, how did the union get it up to this number? How did the union not put their foot down and actually advocate for what's right? Everything that I see people complaining about the teachers union, or about the teachers and about the school system in Alberta has to do with DEI. They're like, our kids are falling behind and they're making sure that they don't ever fail a grade. That's DEI. And it's not supposed to be implemented in Alberta. So how the heck is it happening? I would love to know. And so when people sit there and they think, how are our institutions all not doing so good? What's really going on here? Why are we losing so many teachers, so many nurses, so many doctors, blah, 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 blah? Because nobody is listening to the frontline workers of how this stuff needs to go. Like I said, life wasn't perfect during Harper, but we knew how to run a society, okay? We knew how to run it. The most that we needed was more funding. We didn't need to change up an entire ideology. We didn't need to tout Marxist theories as fact, okay, to have a functioning, running country. So now we live in a Canada where everybody who is in charge of, funding all of these programs will not listen to the people who are on the front line actually working in these programs. And we have so many nurses, doctors, teachers, social workers. I could go on, quit and go and work in America. And instead of listening as to why there are a multitude of people leaving all of these industries that they worked very hard for. I worked my entire life. I worked my butt off to get my lifelong dream of working in the schools. Okay? I worked very hard. I went to school after I had my child. A week after I gave birth, I went to school. And you guys wonder why I was medicated? Oh, well, because I worked so much and my butt off to get that diploma, and my entire identity was tied to this job, and my worth was tied to working and having this diploma and having this job, that it would have been extremely hard to let go. Okay? And yes, I know the irony that I am sitting here with you. Okay? But yeah, we work our butts off to get in this industry. So do you think I'm sorry, a teacher and education worker works 5 days a week, has every holiday off, never has to work overtime. I'm sorry, that when I first got into it, very cushy job, until it requires you being abused every single day to get a paycheck. And I am not a daycare provider. I didn't go to school and learn counseling and record myself so that I was allowed to have kids beat the crap out of me and just stand there and take it. No, that weighed on me. And instead of actually listening to frontline workers about what's going on in any province or across the field, we're just spending $97,000 to go listen to people who have other agendas. Okay? Because between the unions not listening to frontline workers, the CEOs and the management not listening to frontline workers, and then municipalities, provinces, and federally not listening to frontline workers. You guys ran a whole campaign, go frontline workers, until they didn't want to take a certain medication, right? Until they're disagreeing with DEI measures and coming out conservative. And to come out and say that you're even voting differently than left in Canada, it's a big deal. So, I'm here to tell you guys, you're not crazy. This government's just not listening to us because they don't care. So I just seen a picture of Frank Vaughn wearing a Christmas hat and it cheered me up a bit. But let me know, guys, have you worked in the fields? Have you guys seen firsthand these DEI policies having a negative impact on your workplace? If you want to email me, you can. I'm not sure what my computer, phone, everything's doing, saying I'm out of memory. I pay for memory every month. What do you mean I'm out of memory? Oh, these companies drive me crazy. Anyways, guys, I want you guys to know that you matter, you belong, you're here for a reason, and may the odds be ever in your favor. Let's take a deep breath. I want to know, is there snow where you are? We have like 30 centimeters of snow. I'll post a picture today. Yesterday, I literally thought to myself out of nowhere, I really want to go garden. There's 40 centimeters of snow. I think it's just like, this is going to be sad. This is going to bum you guys out maybe a little bit, but keep listening. When I go to think, I'm going to text my grandma about that. She's dead. So it's not possible. Anyways, guys, if you don't laugh, you're gonna cry, which is okay. That's okay. This world has gone to complete arse. And one time, my internet friend put this into perspective for me, that when we feel feelings, emotions as a human, that is just one thing that the robots can't feel. You know what I mean? I'm not even sure that the elites have emotion like that. So if there's one, even if you're going through things, if there's one thing you could appreciate, it is truly how connected we are to our bodies, and feeling emotions is a beautiful human experience, even when it sucks. That's all I got, okay? We gotta find joys in the little things, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.